Let's join Heather and our instructional coach for early learners, Ann Potter, as they talk about this week's high leverage practice.
Welcome to Little Bits of TLC, the podcast where we explore the dynamic world of education. Join our host, Heather Volchko, as this season we focus on high leverage practices, HLPs. Each episode will examine a different HLP, essential strategies designed to enhance teaching and improve outcomes across various educational settings. These practices focus on collaboration, assessment, social, emotional, behavioral support, and instruction, benefiting all K-12 students. I hope you're ready to be both challenged and inspired, because this season is all about mastering the HLPs. This is Little Bits of TLC. Looking for something that actually fits your life? TLC University is here for that. Each week, we spotlight something different. A webinar with real-world insights, a hangout-style interview, and a hands-on workshop or a Q&A where we answer your questions. It's flexible, it's self-paced, and most come with CEUs. So whether you're looking to grow, reflect, or just listen in, there's something here for you. And it's all in one place. university.thresholdlearning.org. That's where you'll find show notes, professional blogs, a full catalog of ACE-accredited courses, and downloadable resources. It all just keeps growing. So whether you're walking the dog, commuting, or taking a breather between the daily grind, TLC University meets you where you are. Head to university.thresholdlearning.org and check out what's new this week. See you then.
Teachers help students to develop important concepts and skills that provide the foundation for more complex learning. Teachers sequence lessons that build on each other and make connections explicit in both planning and delivery. They activate students' prior knowledge and show how each lesson fits with previous ones. Planning involves careful consideration of learning goals, what is involved in reaching the goals, and allocating time accordingly. Ongoing changes like pacing and examples occur throughout the sequence based on student performance.
This week, we're talking about high leverage practice number 12, systematically designing instruction toward a specific learning goal. And I'm really excited to hear what you have to share, because I think you have some skills from the long tenure that some of our newest educators don't have. So for you, what does this look like in your practice?
Historically, the opportunity existed to craft instructional units that were designed to focus on a handful of learning objectives. I knew what the standards were. I knew what the general time of year in which mastery of those standards was supposed to happen. And I could construct units that went cross-curriculum to try to focus on them and hit them home with more careful interpretation of standards and fidelity and curriculums. I increasingly got a number of scripts that said, this is the focus of your instruction, this is the way to do it. And research-based, fantastic for my typical learners. It would progress on grade level, it would hit home runs, they would make progress, but I never ever had a classroom of typical learners. I always had ones for whom that typical arc, they were done in 3 days when the arc was 5. I had learners who at the end of 5 days still had no clue what was going on. So as a practitioner, what I needed to do was reach back in my historical toolkit and say, this particular approach to learning this particular objective is not effective and successful for this pocket of students for these reasons. And if I accept that my typical delivery is not working, then I need to broaden that umbrella for what other activities and possibilities can I bring to the table to engage the students so they can then master, or at least come closer to mastering, the particular skill that's targeted in the unit. So it's a matter of saying, this child is an auditory learner. So to continue to tell them things, they're not going to have great success at very much of a speed. If I recognize, oh, they just need to touch it, feel it, design it, hold it, then I'll put something in their hands. If they can't figure out a particular rhythm to something, can't figure out times tables, put a stress ball in their hand so they can do times facts to a rhythm. But it's a matter of adapting and adjusting. How can I best give my students opportunities for success?
I appreciate how you're calling out these learning styles, but back before you were even just describing, like, how do you even see the student needing kind of like meet that instruction in almost their style, not even like that strategic trajectory. You made a comment about knowing really like what I would refer to as like developmental levels. At this grade level, at this part of the year, this is kind of where we would anticipate that, learning trajectory to fall. And I'm thinking like right now, the majority of conversations that I hear at the table are talking about they're not making like quote unquote expected progress. And it's sort of this like ambiguous, they're just not meeting the mark. But I'm wondering if we really know what that means. Like from your tenure, like these skills and these parts of the year and these subjects or these grade levels, like there's certain kind of anticipations that happen, but now we just run the metrics and the metric says not making expected progress, as opposed to then knowing, like as a practitioner, do I actually know where that's falling along the calendar or along the grade level?
Well, not meeting expected progress is some standard that has been placed on a timeline that says the student will be able to fill in the blank. If my standard is the student will be able to make change, and there's nothing in the pipeline that says the student has been able to identify coins and their values and has sufficient math skills to add two dimes together or two quarters together, then I can't hit that making change standard because they don't have the requisite skills. So if my language says they're not making expected progress, they're not reaching the expected milestone or standard, I need to back up the bus, so to speak, to say, why are they not making progress? Now, if I continue to assess, they can't make change, they can't make change, they can't make change, they can't make change, but I've not then backed up to backfill the missing academic pieces, my data is never going to show them making progress. And when I'm under the gun for time, one of the drawbacks in education is I have enough time to assess the skill. And that's all I have time to do. Assess the skill, still can't do it. Check, moving on. But if I don't want to say slow it down because it really isn't slow it down. It's more backfilling that says, I don't have the underlying foundation to meet this particular standard. So if I recognize, it's not going to take me more than two assessments or two progress checks to say, we're not making progress. Why are we not making progress? Well, if I keep presenting the material the same way and I'm not making progress, the student just doesn't understand the presentation of the material, however it is I'm doing it. And I need to accept that my approach is not a successful approach and sort out what could I do differently. Because at the end of the day, very often a child who is struggling to learn something is not going to be able to explain to you why they don't get it. Now, I occasionally have worked with students where they're struggling with reading, and I finally get them to say, tell me exactly what you see on the page. And that's when I go, oh man, they are not seeing words. They are not seeing the letters in the right order. They don't recognize where the sentences end to look for context. So I'm going, if I don't have those foundational skills, trying to address reading words is really pretty pointless. So while my metric is a reading metric, I can continue to assess that and continue to see lack of progress. Or I can invest my instructional time and say, fill in those gaps, do something that makes sense. If I'm working with a little child and we're doing letter identification and all they are doing is hearing it, well, then I need to put something together where they're hearing it and seeing it. And if we still don't see advancement of progress, then I need to do the hearing it, seeing it, and then get something tactile going where they're tracing letters on sandpaper or, with the little kids, you do the tactile foam type stuff. With my older level kids, again, if my way of teaching it is not sticking, I need to find a different way to present. And if I understand different learning styles, then I can start to match a learning style that's appropriate for the student with the student so that it's all about adapting the instruction and filling in whatever learning gaps are there. In the moment, it's so, I don't want to say easy because that's not quite the right context. It's an available trap to fall into that says, my kid just doesn't get it. They're just not figuring it out. I don't know why. They're just not focusing. They're not paying attention. They're always busy. Well, if you continue to present something to me in a way I don't understand it and can't figure out, you are going to have difficulty holding my attention. And as an adult, when I'm trying to, supposed to be figuring out how to do something, and you are talking and you look like Charlie Brown's teacher to me, I am not paying attention. I am fidgeting, and I am not going to hit whatever mark it is I'm supposed to be hitting as a result of the professional development or the opportunities that are out there. Students are no different. I got to find a way that connects with the way they learn and ultimately engages them. I got to have a hook. And no, I'm not necessarily going to find it on the first, second, third, fourth, 50th try, but it's out there. You just got to keep searching to find it.
So I know you've shared a lot here in sort of that delivery element of how am I delivering the instruction to get that engagement, to find the way that that learning is going to stick with that student. But I want to talk about like how do you, you're noticing these gaps and you're saying so fill them in. Well, how do you decide? Like which gaps do I fill in first? How is that going to, how am I prioritizing which gaps are going to get me the greatest gain? Or like if I just fill in this gap, then it'll probably take care of all the other gaps, right? Like how are you actually designing, I'm almost thinking like that sequence of skills that are needed to hit that learning goal. Because you've been talking about the goal being kind of like the standard, that learning outcome, like we're going to get there and I can assess and identify, where they're at and getting there. And I'm noticing all of these gaps. Well, then how do I systematically structure filling in each of those gaps or at least doing so in such a way that I'm going to see those metrics change or those learnings happen?
Virtually every standard that's out there at every level has got prerequisite skills. There are things that have to be in place in order for there to be success at a particular standard. And if I don't have those prerequisite skills, if I'm missing one of a half a dozen prerequisite skills, I can probably fake it and meet the standard. But if I'm missing multiple prerequisite skills, I'm not likely to be able to fake it and hit the standard. So what you wind up doing is saying, okay, we're not hitting the standard. You start to do your detective work, assess why am I not hitting the standard? And if you can understand the series of prerequisite skills and a number of places you can find prerequisite skills for particular standards. If I look at a particular standard for a ninth grade student in English language arts, character development, I can back up and look at the standards for sixth grade, for fifth grade, for third grade. And that gives me, if they're not consolidated somewhere else, that gives me a list of prerequisite skills going towards that ninth grade standard. And then you put on your detective hat and you ask questions. You talk to the student, you interact with the student to try to identify what those gaps are. And it could be it's just a single area of something they missed, didn't understand, didn't stick, fill that singular gap, and magic happened. You're meeting the standard. But it is an interactive and iterative process. And I get frustrated with the student can't hit this year's metric. Well, they were out sick with pneumonia for the month that prerequisite skill was taught the prior year. So it's a gap in their knowledge base. Fill the gap, meet the metric, move on. But it's taking the time to have the conversation and do the diagnostics to figure out where the gap is.
So how do you keep the student informed along the way? Because the way you're describing this is like there's kind of a sequence, like kind of a direction that we're headed, and I'm going to move in that direction. And as I find missing pieces, we may backtrack and kind of fill those in and keep going. How have you been able to help students track along the way? Or has maybe it just been different in your practice? Because for me, I've worked with students who have been, in and out of incarceration, or they've been in and out of like a variety, like you're saying, has kind of perpetuated these learning gaps. And
Mhm.
so they just have these strange splinters where they've totally got something and completely missing something else. So I'm doing exactly what you're talking about. Whereas, okay, you've got it. We're going to keep moving. Oh, you don't have it. Let's back that up. Let's see what we can fill in and let's, kind of catch that along the way. But there is kind of a conversation that I'm having with the students that I'm working with so that
Mhm.
it's not just like confusion of like, wait, I thought we were doing this and now we're doing that. Like, how is this all making sense? Like, how do you keep your student along for the journey that is their own learning journey toward that specific goal?
You talk to them. You listen to them. You have a conversation. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than a student at any level. Every week you're progress monitoring. You're giving the same assessment and they are not succeeding every single week. Eventually they're going, "Why are we still doing this? I don't understand it. I don't get it." Okay, fine. I concede. I'm stupid. I don't get it. Move on. As opposed to having that conversation that says, "You're a bright student. I know you've got skill. For some reason, you don't have skill in this dimension. We need to figure out why." And then you talk and you listen. So many people I come across with these days are so focused on the dumpster fire that's going on in the moment, you can't take a step back and actually listen to the peace and the calm and the answers that you get in the moment. So the student who has not met progress for the third time, look at their body language. They're frustrated. They know they didn't meet the standard. So you look at them and says, there is something in this particular task that you just have not figured out. And if we've done it unsuccessfully 2 or 3 times, clearly what we're doing to try to master it isn't working. And then you talk and says, "Well, have you ever done this particular prerequisite skill?" And when they give you the deer in the headlights look, because they don't know how to answer you because they don't really understand your question, you've got some insight into at least one of the gaps. But it's a matter of reading their language, reading their body language so that you can fill those gaps so that they can then do that progress monitoring task and have success. They may not hit the mark, but at least they've hit some of the mark. And then that notion where you say, look, you got skill. You can do this. We just need to figure out what the glitch is at this moment. And at this point, there is so much technology stuff. Glitch is language that permeates at almost any student level. You just, you're glitching right now. We got to figure out what the patch is to make it stop glitching. And then they're like, "Oh, well, that means I gotta da 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 da." And now they're starting to think and to process, and then they bring all sorts of information and knowledge to the table that can help you inform your practice and help them get better outcomes.
Yeah, I appreciate how this conversation is so student driven. And I appreciate that you're a general education teacher by training, having such a student focused conversation. Because so often this high leverage practice is looked at as well, here's how you can define a scope and sequence. Here's how you can make sure that your lesson opener and your lesson closer are connecting the loop between what we did yesterday and what we're doing tomorrow. And all of these like strategic kind of lesson, planning and delivery type of things. And I love how you have taken this and said, yes, yes to all of that. Like use all of those strategies. That is absolutely applicable, but it is really dependent on that student, how they're showing up, what they're showing up with, or what they're not showing up with, and engaging them in that conversation so that they can see kind of their own learning journey. And it's all of your professional practitioner moves that are around their learning that is what's actually just making it happen with them.
Well, and my total plus with having those deep dive conversations with the students, I can shotgun an approach trying to figure out what the missing piece is and spend an incredible amount of time eliminating a lot of things. Or I can have the conversation with a student and use their words to say, I think this might be the top place to go look for that gap. And then it allows me as the practitioner to more strategically target what the likely gaps are. And we are admittedly so many years past COVID at this point, where one part of my brain says, we are so far past COVID, let's just get moving on. But throughout all of those years, everybody seems to have gaps someplace. And it's just being that proverbial educational detective to sort out, so where are your gaps? And accepting and understanding, everybody's got them. Some people have gotten better at masking them, at filling in some of the blanks, and others have not had that opportunity out there. So it makes our challenge as practitioners a little bit trickier because we're navigating a lot more different stuff than we used to.
Well, thank you for bringing that student centered planning perspective into something that tends to be such a broad practice of that systematic design and just hitting that learning goal. So, thank you for bringing that student front and center into really guiding and leading how we are systematically designing our instruction.
As I want that student to have success like the rest of them.
Working in a self contained, alternative education, therapeutic, or correctional classroom? Project Onward is a 6-strand cohort based project designed to help you build a strong, structured program for complex students who need extra specialized support. You'll get practical tools to set up clear routines, strengthen engagement, manage behavior, and plan instruction that actually fits the splintered needs of your students. By the end, you'll walk away with a complete, ready to use program that has been adapted to your local needs. Led by Heather Volchko, Lathrell Eisler, Jonathan Barbario, and Manny Wasias, Project Onward blends proven strategies with vetted experience, helping you move forward with confidence. If you're creating something from the ground up or looking to update what you've got, this project gives you the structure and clarity to do it well. If you support students with low incident needs, Project Base helps you design a consistent classroom built just for them. And if you're working in general ed or resource settings with behavioral challenges, Project Thrive gives you the tools to work with, not against, the flow of your classroom. Visit university.thresholdlearning.org to meet the team and get started today. Let's move onward, together.
Students with disabilities need instruction that is more systematically designed compared to their typically developing peers. Research has identified key elements of effective systematic instruction that should be integrated into lessons and units. Among these, three core components stand out: having clear instructional goals, sequencing knowledge and skills logically, and teaching students how to organize content. Effective instruction starts with clear, attainable learning goals stated in specific, measurable terms. Teachers carefully select and sequence content to build on what students already know. This means teaching simpler skills before more complex ones, introducing frequently used information before less common material, and ensuring that prerequisites are mastered before moving to advanced concepts. Teachers also focus on teaching clear, unambiguous information before more complex material and separating content and skills that are similar in form or function to prevent confusion. Additionally, teachers make explicit connections between content and skills across lessons to help students link prior knowledge with new information. This approach allows students to see relationships between facts, concepts, and principles, which aids in retention and deeper understanding. By systematically designing instruction with these principles, teachers can better support students in achieving their learning goals and facilitate meaningful application of knowledge. Systematic design of instruction is a crucial, high leverage practice that guides educators in tailoring their approach to meet the needs of students with disabilities effectively. This method emphasizes the importance of structuring, ordering, and specifying instruction in a way that aligns with each student's unique requirements. For students with disabilities, this precise approach can significantly enhance their learning outcomes. Before diving into systematic instruction, effective educators collaborate closely with colleagues and families, as highlighted in high leverage practices 1 and 3. They also rely on data driven decision making, guided by HLPs 2, 4, and 6, to ensure that instruction is responsive and impactful. The core elements of this systematic design are intricately linked with other HLPs, such as HLP 16, which underscores the use of explicit instruction, and HLP 11, focusing on identifying and prioritizing both long and short term learning goals. By integrating these practices, educators can craft well instructed and adaptive learning experiences that are both meaningful and accessible for their students. Designing instruction that effectively guides students toward their learning goals involves a nuanced approach that integrates clarity, structure, and adaptability. Teachers who excel in this area are adept at translating broad, long term objectives into specific, actionable lesson targets that are clear, measurable, and aligned with students' needs. Using a structured framework like the accomplish model, which stands for antecedent condition, conspicuous behavior, clear criteria, observable, measurable, positive, linked to the general curriculum, individualized, socially valid, and high reaching, can significantly enhance this process. This model encourages teachers to set goals that are specific and measurable, clearly defining what students should do to demonstrate their learning and how it will be assessed. For instance, instead of just stating that students should improve their reading skills, a goal might be to read a certain number of words per minute with a specified accuracy rate and answer a set percentage of comprehension questions correctly. This level of detail ensures that both students and teachers understand exactly what is expected and how progress will be measured. Moreover, instruction should be strategically sequenced. This means introducing fundamental concepts and skills before moving on to more complex ones, teaching similar skills separately before requiring students to distinguish between them, and focusing on commonly encountered content before less frequent material. By systematically structuring lessons to build from simple to complex, teachers help students make meaningful connections between new information and what they already know. Effective teachers also incorporate principles of explicit instruction. They connect new content to overarching big ideas, use clear and direct strategies to reinforce these connections, and provide scaffolding support through a model, lead, test approach. They engage students' prior knowledge through guided discussions, integrate new content with existing knowledge to foster higher order thinking, and use judicious review to reinforce and build upon previously learned material. Tools like graphic organizers can further aid in organizing and visualizing content, helping students manage and integrate new information. Additionally, ongoing data collection allows teachers to monitor progress and make necessary adjustments to instruction, ensuring that teaching strategies remain responsive to student needs and yield the best possible outcomes. In essence, systematically designing instruction requires a blend of strategic planning, clear goal setting, and responsive teaching practices. This approach not only facilitates students' achievements of learning goals, but also fosters a dynamic and engaging learning environment. Supporting teachers in systematically designing effective instruction involves a multifaceted approach from school leaders. First and foremost, it's crucial to ensure that educators have a well rounded set of instructional strategies, including explicit teaching methods. This foundational knowledge enables teachers to craft lessons that are both structured and responsive to student needs. Leaders should assess whether educators possess the necessary skills and strategies to design effective instruction. Based on this assessment, providing targeted professional development and coaching is key. This support can focus on areas such as developing high quality learning targets using the accomplish method. This method serves as a practical guide for setting clear, measurable goals that align with standards and individual education plans, or IEPs. Moreover, it's important for school leaders to review these goals to ensure they meet high standards for quality and relevance. This involves checking that goals are specific, actionable, and appropriately challenging. Feedback on the quality and specificity of these goals helps teachers refine their objectives and improve their effectiveness. Additionally, a robust plan for evaluating student progress is essential. Leaders should support teachers in establishing and managing effective data collection practices. This ensures that teachers can monitor student progress accurately and make informed decisions to adjust instruction as needed. By focusing on these areas, school leaders can significantly enhance the ability of educators to systematically design instruction that meets diverse student needs and promotes academic success. Despite substantial research on learning goals, lesson sequencing, and visual content displays, few studies have explored these practices in isolation. This makes it challenging to gauge the specific impact of each element on overall intervention effectiveness. What we know is that these practices are seldom applied individually. They are typically integrated into well designed lessons and instructional units. However, even with meticulously crafted lessons, achieving satisfactory outcomes for every student isn't guaranteed. Therefore, ongoing monitoring of student progress is crucial, If students aren't progressing as expected, it's important to scrutinize the lesson goals, sequencing, and clarity of connections between concepts. These factors could be the root causes of inadequate progress, highlighting the need for systematic component analysis to refine our understanding of these instructional practices. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Join us next week when Heather sits down with our instructional leadership coach, Dr. Aaron Van Acker, to talk about our next high leverage practice.
Hey, before you jump back into your busy life, consider dropping a like and follow at Threshold Learning TLC on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you like our show, share the podcast with your colleagues. A personal recommendation is by far the best way to promote the podcast. Let them know that they can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else that they catch their podcast. Just be sure to leave a rating and review on your favorite platform. You can email us at info@thresholdlearning.org. We always enjoy connecting with fellow educators and champions for educational justice. You can find everything you're looking for at thresholdlearning.org. See you there. Attention educators pursuing behavior analysis certification and universities preparing them for success. Supervision with TLC offers 100% remote fieldwork supervision designed specifically for school-based professionals. Educators can earn their hours right in their schools without leaving their classroom, all while being supported by experienced BCBAs who understand the realities of education. With month-to-month scheduling, affordable rates, and both live video and asynchronous chat, our fieldwork supervision model is designed to fit into your life, not the other way around. We also invite universities to enhance their graduate programs in partnership with our team of practicing school-based BCBAs. Our fieldwork supervision model keeps students on track for certification by helping them connect their practice to all exam domains so that they can confidently pass the exam. Explore more at university.thresholdlearning.org/supervision or email supervision@thresholdlearning.org to connect. Supervision with TLC, where educators grow into behavior analysts.